Well, obviously, emotional 24 hours. Certainly disappointed, a little bit angry with what's taking place here with the selection committee. But at the end of the day, I'm just really proud of this team. We had a really good year, and excited to keep playing more games. 23 wins and 14 ACC wins. This group's got a lot to be proud of. And, I also want to thank our fans. We had great turnout this year, especially later in the season. I hurt for our fans, too, because this, the NCAA tournament is a big deal. And to be this close, and we'd all love to be, we'd love to be playing. I know our fans would love to be following us. So, I hurt for them as well. Just in terms of, you're going to ask me about it, the committee has a hard job. A lot of the teams are, we're all very similar in certain ways. We all have our warts. We all have things we've done well, accomplishments, big wins. One of the things I told our team is, unfortunately we lost a couple games that we probably shouldn't have, and, we put it in the committee's hands. And when you do that, then sometimes you're not going to always get the call you want. It's like being at the end of a game and, you putting it in the referee's hands at the end of a game. That's something that we don't like. We would rather control things we can control. Having said all that, I still adamantly feel like, they made a mistake. And it's hard to listen to some of the things that are said, that it, basically was all metrics is what it looks like. And the problem with that is there's so many metrics that they just pick and choose. And I said this a month ago, that they just pick and choose whatever they want. In 18-19, we didn't have enough quad one wins. We had great. We didn't have bad losses, and we lost to elite teams because that was the year that there were 3 number 1 seeds from the ACC, but we were kept out with that. This year we obviously had some bad losses, but we had great wins. I mean, we were 4-4 against quad one teams, and 3 of those were on the road. And it rings true in my ear. Jay Billis, and that's maybe way back in 18-19 when I didn't like what he was saying, was who can you beat and where can you beat them? And we proved that we can beat several of the teams that got in, and we can beat them at home, we can beat them on the road, we can beat them in neutral, and we did that. And to watch some of those teams get in and us not, I know that part of it was hard for me, and it was really hard for our players. It's hard to justify that to your players. They don't know all the metrics and all those kinds of things, and I don't think it makes sense. And obviously that's why when the shows are over and you listen to Fonzo Ellis, Dick Vitale, Seth Greenberg, and Jay Billis, and they're all saying that Clemson should have been in, this has been a very challenging time. But again, we had chances to take care of our business, and we didn't. So we left it up to the committee, and unfortunately maybe the metrics are more important than common sense or just head-to-head watching games. So I feel bad about that. But again, I just think there's a lot of good positive momentum with our program. I'm really proud of this team. My heart hurts for Hunter Tyson, Brevin Galloway, the seniors. They don't get another chance. And what those guys sacrificed and how hard they worked to put our team in this position to get a chance, that's the part as a coach that you see that really that just hurts you personally to have to watch that and watch those guys suffer a little bit. Having said that, I think I do think we'll rally. I think our guys will hopefully shake it off today. Yesterday was tough, and we can understand why, but today we've had to try to, turn our attention to Morehead State. Got a lot of respect for them. We played them a couple years ago. Coach Spradlin does a great job. Won their league again. They've been winning their league most years now. just a really good team. Great quickness, good speed, shoot the three. I think they had the defensive player of the year in the league. He does a really good job. They run some really good action, a lot of movement, a lot of pace to their offense, a lot of misdirection. It's good stuff. And you can see why he's a good young up-and-coming coach. And so it'll be a challenging game. And, we've got to shake off the cobwebs here and move forward. And so we'll see how we do at practice today, but try to get that energy back.
Brad,
So questions?
seems like whether it be you guys this year or A&M last year, it seems like there's a precedent being set that the committee will reward teams for playing more high-quality competition in non-conference, regardless if they win any of those games or not, rather than a certain amount of wins or how you
Yeah.
finish in your conference.
Yeah, it's a
What
hard,
your
yeah,
take on that is,
yeah.
And then also, can you explain sort of your philosophy to non-conference scheduling?
Well, first of all, like it may change year to year based on your team, right? And what league you're in. Like the easiest example is Gonzaga, right? Because Gonzaga plays in the WCC, maybe not quite as strong as some of the Power 5 leagues, top to bottom. So they schedule like crazy in the non-conference to make sure that they're getting enough, big-time games. Most years when you're in the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, you're going to get enough Quad 1 and Quad 2 games that, you're going to still try to find a few in the non-conference, but you're not going to go load up with 8. Half of that usually, 5 or 6. Obviously, we have the Big Ten Challenge every year. We play South Carolina. We always play in an exempt, and usually that's at least 4 to 5. And then a lot of times we'll play a neutral. And, the hard part with sometimes with Clemson, and this is a complaint that I've stated to the league office for years, we're not all treated the same in the league. In the ACC Big Ten Challenge, I've been the head coach at Clemson for 13 years. I find it unbelievably ironic that in one of those years we can't play Indiana. Like, I'm from Southern Indiana. Like, that's not a good TV story. Like, that we can't sell that as a, they're usually one of the best teams in the Big Ten. Like, we can't bring them to Clemson one time, or I can't go back to Indiana or Purdue for that matter. We've never, those are challenging games that obviously if we would win them are very rewarding, right? It's the same with some of the non-conference tournaments, Battle for Atlantis and the Maui Classic, and, those are rotated every 4 years, but, Carolina and Duke and a lot of the bigger name basketball program Blue Bloods, they get to go to all those more than, we really ever do. And so we've got to go find other things. Like this year, we end up being penalized. We lose to Iowa on a tough call at the end of a game, and we play Cal. Mark Fox, one of my best friends, and they happen to have a million injuries and finished 300 in the and so like we didn't schedule that to get a 300 RPI game. It just fell in our lap. South Carolina's in a rebuild. They have a bad year. Beat us, but they're rebuilding, so they're not as strong as probably the worst net team of South Carolina since I've been here. Happens to be this year. We tried to schedule 2 neutral site games. We actually took away a home game this year to schedule 2 neutral site games against Loyola and Richmond, 2 teams that have perennially been Quad 2, even Quad 1 games, and they're 3 and 4 this year. Loyola and Richmond have pretty good pedigree. I could try to get other, but I can't. I got to get somebody who wants to play us too. And so my point to that is like, it's a challenge, and we're not getting a lot of help. And I think that's something that I've been, beating the drum on for years that's fallen on deaf ears sometimes. I'm hopeful it's going to get changed a little bit because the league getting 5 teams in here recently all the time, it's not enough. And I don't think it's right. I think there should be more. There's a fine line when you go overboard with the metrics. Once you start playing in a league that has really good metrics, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose that many. You just play, and you're actually in a more dangerous position when you're Clemson, and we're playing some league teams that don't have good metrics. Well, the night we played Louisville, there were 16,000 people there. They were celebrating the 2013 team. And it wasn't the same as all the other games I watched Louisville play at home. Like there was juice, and those dudes played good, and And all that game can do is hurt you. And we had some other games like that. And so we had a couple bad things happen. We got to handle our business. I've stated that. That's, at the end of the day, if we just won one more game, we're probably in. But it's not quite as easy as everybody thinks it is. And sometimes there's things that you schedule ahead of time that just, you can't control whether the other team is as good as you thought they would be or they have been.
Coach, when you win the Big Ten Challenge and you got so many more Big Ten teams going to the tournament, they get so much more respect in the net. Their ninth-place team is going in over the ACC third-place team. You ask yourself, what's the point of playing that?
Not so much playing it. This year that helped us because Penn State ended up being a great game. Now, I don't think they predicted Penn State to be as good as they were, and they didn't pick Clemson to be as good as they were. That's why they put us together. We lucked into it one year when we had a good team and weren't picked to be good, and Ohio State wasn't picked to be good, and we beat them up there when they ended up winning the league. But it's not good when you're just playing, teams that don't help you as much. It's good for high net teams, but not others. It's frustrating because our league did win the challenge, and I do think there's not that much difference, if there is, between the Big Ten and the ACC. But for them to get almost twice as many schools, I don't see it.
Brad, what was your reaction when you saw North Carolina, a team that was thought to have less of a shot to get in?
Yeah, I don't. It didn't matter really. No, not really. I mean, we're either in or we're not in, and you're 69 or 70 or 71. What it shows is just they had a good non-conference schedule, and lost some games against really good teams. So that part was really rewarded. That goes back to but it's easier for North Carolina to get those games. They're invited to the CBS Classic. They're invited to the Nike tournament. They're invited to different games. They play Indiana at Indiana. And so, again, it's a little bit of rewarding teams for what you just said. Maybe if you play them but you don't win, you're still rewarded more for playing somebody and winning. And that's where there's a point here with the metrics that we've got to get past, right? We can't – and there's too much movement. You win a game by a lot and you move up a lot. So then at the end of the game, are you not supposed to play your young guys? There were a couple of games when I was at the end, when we were close, I was like, I'm going to keep my starters in an extra minute or two here because I don't want it to – I want to make sure it stays near 20. I mean, that's the first time I've ever done that. And it's also, and I think I did this at North Carolina, I got to double check. We were getting hammered and not playing well, and I was upset with my starters, so I wanted to bench them. You guys need to sit. I need to play the young guys. And if they don't do well, you're not doing well. If we lose by 12 or we lose by 25, it doesn't matter we lost. Well, no, it does matter, Brad. So then you don't play those guys? So we're coaching like that now because we're worried about our defensive metrics for Ken Pom and our offensive metrics. And none of that, they can't – obviously they don't know of those things that are going on, but you trying to prove a point to your team and coach your team and bring some attention to your team works against you? The metrics are way too much then, and obviously the head-to-head games now, obviously the head-to-head games speak to themselves. I mean, it's crazy when you're all this close, and we're not going to look at playing each other on the court. And I know that's the outrage, and it should be from our fan base. And again, I'm proud of our fan base for that because that makes zero sense.
So speaking of North Carolina, I think I know the answer to this, but was there any consideration to declining?
No.
the 19?
No.
When you saw NC State bid on both, were you thinking, hey, we beat these teams, maybe that's good for us, or were you thinking that's a bubble team and we're in that spot?
Yeah. I did not think that the ACC was going to get 6 teams in, just based on listening to everybody. Even though I think we probably deserve 6 teams. I'm not, it doesn't have to be Clemson or NC State. Obviously, if I thought it was one, it should have been us. I mean, just based on common sense. But why can't it be both, and Pitt, right? And obviously the committee thought otherwise.
Does it think it's any of its name recognition and history and some of that kind of stuff?
I'd like not to. Politics, any of that, do some research.
Is there any flexibility in terms of scheduling next year to try to add more teams or just?
Yeah, it'll be similar approach because again, you're going to have a certain amount of home games because you're trying to have your season ticket package, and you're going to try to do some neutral. And like the thing that was interesting, I didn't realize until I looked at it, like NC State didn't play a road game in non-conference. They played a bunch of home games, and then they played 4 neutrals, which maybe that's a good strategy. It worked. Maybe like us playing the true road game at South Carolina was bad for us because we lost, right? So it's like back to the old home and homes. I don't know that most people, like, we've gone to these neutrals because the range for a neutral changes from 30 to 50 for quad 1. So okay, now you got a bigger window. If a team doesn't happen to get in the top 30, but they're in the top 48. That's a quad 1 game. That's pretty daggone good. Or it's 100 for quad 2, I think, or 130. And so now your windows open up a little bit more. And so now you're trying to find ways to get guys in. Okay, maybe they're quad 2. If they come here, it's got to be top 75. It's hard to get in the top 75, and it's hard to get a top 75 team to come. So it gets really challenging. And that's why you see a lot of these neutral site events take off. Guys are trying to do that, and we've been trying to do that the last couple of years. And we've had some good ones. Sometimes it's worked. We got in Alabama, that one year. That was great. One year, the year that we actually in 19, we played Mississippi State, who happened to be a quad 1 team. They beat us up there in New Jersey. But you got to get a little fortunate that you get the right team and that the promoter can get you guys together, and that part is where the advantage happens for the name recognition schools, the Blue Bloods and the others. That's where it's a little harder for us.
I guess when you look at the missed opportunity of not beating Iowa and then not
Yes,
beating Blake,
that was huge. That was huge. It's funny. Mark Fox and I actually tried to call the guy and say, can we just make it a classic? Like, we want to play TCU and Iowa, not so we don't play each other. Part of it just because we're friends, but part of it I was selfishly looking at it like TCU is going to be better than you are, and Iowa's going to be a hard game. It's going to be a great game. But the guy didn't want us to do that, so couldn't do it.
If you could find more, or what's believed to be more higher level Power 6 teams that would be willing to play you, do you look at playing more home and homes in the future, trying to?
Possibly. You want to have a certain amount of home games, travel. You also want to have a certain amount of games where you think you're going to win sometimes early because you need to play some guys. Like you don't really know what you have. Then you have an injury, and then you got young players that you're trying to get minutes, and you're trying to figure out what can this guy do and what can he not do, and hopefully you have a little bit of an advantage where you're the better team and you can sub a little bit and feel good about doing some of those things. And then you still got to worry about the metrics at the end. There are some schools, and Iowa's good at that. They do this. They play a lot of the high 300s, and then they try to win by as much as possible. They try to win by 50. And then their metrics started tremendous. Like, we've just kind of figured this out, like in the last year, watching some of them, and I don't like that. Like, then you're trying to beat somebody's brains in down there by as much as you can so that your offensive numbers are better and your defensive numbers are better, and it takes a long time for those numbers to then even out. But that's like a strategy. And that now we're like, what are we doing, right? Is that really what this is about? I don't know.
Coach, what's the challenge, I guess, in picking up their morale and bringing out their natural competitiveness to get ready for this thing?
I told our guys when we met before, we had a meal together at 5, and right before we ate, I got everybody going, guys, this is a celebration of a great season. We have a lot to be proud of. I'm I've just thoroughly enjoyed coaching you, and you guys have been unbelievable. And no matter what happens, and I said, guys, I have no idea. I think it's 50-50. I actually kind of was leaning. I thought we'd get in. Whatever happens, you know, this is going to end. Like when it ends, it ends. You kind of forget it. As a player, you're in there practicing. Oh, got to go practice again. And then all of a sudden, it's over. And what always happens every year is like we don't see them for about a day and a half, maybe 2 days. And then all of a sudden, they all start trickling back over. And it's like they miss practice, they miss ball, they miss being around each other, and it's like they're going to miss each other, this team, a lot. And so, you know, the best way for that not to happen is to win as many games as we can. Let's make this thing go, whether we're in the NCAA, NIT, like let's just play great basketball and keep it going. And so we talked a little bit after we didn't get in and about, you know, opportunities in front of us, and I'm getting ready to meet with them and, you know, get them introduce Morehead State and get them fired up a little bit, and Hunter Tyson and those guys I think will do a good job.
What's your recourse in sort of venting, or is it just what you're doing right now, letting Graham handle it? Or
No, the commissioner called me last night. I respect that, and you know, so I spoke with the commissioner for, you know, 20 minutes and aired some of my frustrations. And you know, it's crazy because I have been in this league a long time. You know, I've seen a lot, and you know, the last probably 5 or 6 years, I've become a much more vocal guy in the room in ACC head coaches meetings, and I think I've brought up some things that are significant, especially for guys in jobs like mine. Now, not many of them have been acted upon. But a couple of years of getting 5 teams in the tournament, and I think some of those thoughts might change. And, you know, it's just not good enough for the league to be getting 5 teams in the tournament. It's just not. And, you know, it's obvious that last year's success by our league had no bearing on this year, which, okay, like I get it. Maybe it shouldn't, but 3 teams in the Final 8 when you only put 5 in. You know, Notre Dame was 15-5 last year and got put in the playing game. We're 14-6, don't get in. Like you're making the window to get in the NCAA tournament. If you've got to win 14, 15, 16 ACC games every year, that's pretty hard now. You know, so.
How do you feel like you got to a point where veterans are like such a big?
I just think it's so hard to I get to quantify. I mean, I get why you have to have them and use them. I do think there's some merit to it. Like it was, as much as in 19 I didn't like it, when they basically said, hey, you're 1-10 against quad ones, like I guess I understood it, right? Like I kept arguing that there's a difference between playing the first, third, and fifth quad one team versus the 25th, the 27th, and the 29th. It's like we lost Virginia Tech in the last 10 days. They've been a quad one all year. So it was a quad one win and a quad two win. And then in the last week, they went to a quad two and a quad three because they went to 77 or 76 instead of 74. And it doesn't seem like it means that much until every time you put a graphic up and it's like, hey, they're 5-3 or 5-4, and now they're back to 4-4. I mean, we beat NC State on the neutral, and we still had 4 because that was the day they moved over. And so like that, now, really, is that, like, are they looking at it like that? Because that's crazy. Did Virginia Tech change? They got worse and became a quad 2 and 3 the next overnight? I mean, but I do understand you got to have it, right? There's got to be something we can't play everybody. But then there does also have to be some, when we do play, and what are we doing? You know, that's why I felt like after the NC State game, when I was asked in the media at the tournament, you feel like you're in? Yeah, I felt like we were in. We beat them for the 3rd time. My goodness, we've got to be in ahead of them. If you have them in, we just beat them, and our numbers are so similar. I mean, Billis talks about the strength of schedule, and there's some merit to this, that like if they use body of work, Well, then why are we throwing what does your non-conference schedule matter if we're talking about the whole body of work? You combine it all. And again, based on what league you're in, like if you're in the Mountain West and you're not playing as many strong teams, you might have a harder non-conference schedule. You have to. So there's a lot into it. I get it.
When you saw NC State get in as 11 seed, did it make you more confident, or did you say they're not going to give us 6?
Yeah, no, I didn't think we'd get 6. I was not. I hoped, but I didn't think that was. I was surprised that they weren't in the play-in, but they do have good. They have some good numbers. They played a good schedule, so credit to them for that.
Probably got about 5 minutes. You gonna need to go back to 18?
I don't know. Like I don't. Somebody needs to study it, right? Like it's hard this year. It's funny because Mike Bray was one of the big proponents of it, having come from the Big East. He thought that it really helped. It hasn't seemed to work recently very much, but I don't know that it's that. I do think when you have more teams, you're always going to, if you have 15 teams, you're going to have 1 or 2 that are rebuilding, made a coaching change, lost a couple guys early, unexpectedly lose a guy to the NBA, like our KJ McDaniel year. There's some things that are going to happen occasionally that when there's 15, it's more likely you might have 1 or 2 that are not as – we only have 10, less likely that 1 or 2 of them are really struggling. Maybe 1, but not 2. And then when you happen to play them, then that can be, challenging.
As you mentioned in the past, playing some non-conference games later in the years. That's
Yeah.
something we talked to Jim Dillon
Yes. Yeah, I have. And again, obviously you talk about 18 games, that's hard because I'm sure there's some agreements with the network, right, that might not be easy. And then same thing with that is you got to find games for everybody. But I've suggested that. Do we need to play more conference games earlier and open up some windows in January and February to do more crossover games against other leagues? I'm open for change.
I know it's going to be hard either way, but I know you mentioned Hunter a little bit. This guy, you talked about this being a true team. Is that
Yeah.
make it harder having some of the veteran guys that kind of?
Yeah, I think yeah, we have so many guys that put their heart into this one, especially, Alex Hemingway, looks like he's coming back, which is good. Been hurt. Like, you watch some of these guys that get to these points in their career, and you're hoping that they, Chase flourished this year. Great. You know what I mean? Hunter Tyson takes another huge step. First year he's been completely healthy in a long time. As a coach, that's what you love, right? Like, you're so proud of your guys for that development because you watch them, how hard they work. So then when you get this close and it doesn't go your way, man, you see how crushed they are. Yesterday was hard. So.
Can you share any of the other kind of conversations, what that was like with Commissioner Phillips and kind of some of the ideas?
It wasn't anything that we haven't really talked about. Just stuff with the Big Ten Challenge, just stuff helping us with non-conference neutral site games. I threw up an idea of somehow the league has to do something in Charlotte. Maybe it's something associated with a football weekend, the football championship. I don't know. I feel like it's not my job. I got a lot to worry about here, but I try to come up with some ideas to put 3 or 4 schools there and let's see if we can make it a basketball bonanza. It'd be great for us. Dabo's usually playing in that game, so we might be, instead of having a home game with nobody here, we get a game up there and get some people to go. Anybody else?
So, Brad, do you like the field staying at 6 to 8, or are you in favor of expansion?
Obviously, this year I'm in favor of expansion. I do think, in all seriousness, I do think like the nature of it all has changed, right? And the crazy part about it, there's more better teams than ever. There's more better coaching. There's more better players. And so there can be some surprise teams go far. I understand some people don't want to water it down. But there are more than 68 that are probably deserving, that have really good years, and this trying to figure out who's better is, and I know you can always keep going, but it's, you know, you're leaving some good teams out like us. Thanks, everybody.
Coach.
Appreciate it.
See you
Yeah.
Monday.
Thank you.